After a war of words where they sounded like kids in a schoolyard, President Trump and Secretary of State Tillerson, they met for lunch today. Oh, it'll be a fly on the wall. We're going to find out if truce was on the menu. Then, while people are distracted by the president's Twitter wars with Senator Corker and the NFL, the White House making big moves that could impact millions of immigrants, millions more wondering what will happen to their health care. Also, a free speech debate. Can the Dallas Cowboys bench players who peacefully protest during the national anthem? We're going to find that out. Evening, everybody, and welcome to RFL. I'm Richard French. Thank you so much for joining us this Tuesday evening. And we begin tonight with Trump versus Tillerson. Now, the president versus his Secretary of State, and the two men had lunch together in the White House today, and they were joined by Defense Secretary James Mattis and others as they discussed issues like Iran and North Korea. Speaking of that, North Korea was one of the things that exposed the rift between Trump and Tillerson. Right after the Secretary of State met with the Chinese president and said the U.S. is opening up lines of communication with North Korea, the president tweeted this, quote, "I told Rex Tillerson, our wonderful Secretary of State, that he's wasting his time trying to negotiate with Little Rocket Man." That again from our president. And today, the White House, while the press secretary said things are just fine between the two men, take a listen.
He's got 100% confidence in the Secretary of State. He said it multiple times over the last couple of weeks, and we're trying to move forward and focus on the agenda while you guys want to move forward and talk about who likes who.
Now, she, of course, responding to a question about Moron Gate, where NBC and CNN reported and stand by the reporting that Tillerson called the president a moron or a effing moron. You figure out where that was. That after the president got political at the Boy Scout Jamboree speech back in West Virginia. Now, when Trump heard, he was reportedly livid. Soon after, Tillerson took to the mic and said he supports his president, but he refused to deny the moron comment. And the president, of course, wouldn't let it go. So he challenged him, I'm not making this up, to an IQ test. Here's what the president told Forbes, quote, "I think it's fake news, but if he did that, I guess we'll have to compare IQ tests, and I can tell you who is going to win." Wasn't more specific, but I'll take a leap. Now, the White House today said that that was a joke, but his feud with Senator Bob Corker, a Republican from Tennessee and head of the Foreign Relations Committee, ain't no joke. Here's today's installment, and of course, it is in the form of what else but a tweet from our commander-in-chief. The failing New York Times set little Bob Corker up, that's not a misspelling, that's how he tweeted it, by recording his conversation, was made to sound a fool, and that's what I'm dealing with. Now, Corker says he knew the tape was rolling and even asked his people to also record it. Here is part of what President Trump is making such a fuss about.
One of the reasons I supported Mattis and Tillerson and Kelly last week is, again, as long as there's people like that around him who are able to talk him down when it gets spun up, calm him down.
Yeah.
And we could be heading towards World War III with the kind of comments that he's making. And it very much feels to me like he thinks as president he's on a reality television show.
Now, this all started last week after Corker said there would be chaos, his words, chaos at the White House if not for Tillerson, Mattis, and Chief of Staff General Kelly. That set off a Twitter storm by the president this weekend. He said Corker begged him for an endorsement, dropped out when Trump said no, and he also blamed Corker for the, quote, horrendous Iran deal. And finally, he said Corker didn't have the guts to run again. Corker tweeted this response. "It's a shame the White House has become an adult daycare center. Someone obviously missed their shift this morning." That's a pretty good line. Let's bring in our panel right now to sort out the madness. Scott Vanderhoff, former 5-term Republican Rockland County executive and co-chairman of the Palisades Institute of Dominican College. Vinny Blasquio, a campaign manager for both Pataki for president, and he also managed the New York City mayoral campaign of the Joe Loda race in 2013. Andrew Whitman also joins us, of course, our senior political correspondent. This is all funny, Vinny, some of the back and forth. But again, let's consider the source. The Secretary of State saying for anyone to see that the president's an effing moron.
Well, we don't know that.
Well,
he didn't deny it.
Well, the Times and CNN both completely stand by the reporting for people that were eyewitnesses, A. B, you have someone who didn't deny it, with the head of the Foreign Relations Committee, Bob Corker, who by no means is considered anything but a true conservative. Right. He says that on a regular basis, people have to basically manage this president from getting us into things like World War III, and even if we think that language is inflammatory and off the point, he says it's chaos, and it would be more chaos if adults left the room or left the administration because they can't take the president anymore. And again, that's from a guy who knows what's going on around the globe here, as again, the person head of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. Are you more troubled at the missed opportunities or concerned about what people reportedly close to the president have to do to keep him in line? And note, not one Republican senator has come out and decried any of the comments that Bob Corker said, because he claimed he wasn't just speaking for himself.
Right. I'm not that concerned. What I am concerned about is the fact that it's so much in the public discourse. I think there's, on a lesser scale, there's a lot of things we try to maneuver to get candidates or elected officials to try and go one way or the other.
Right.
The fact that you would enlist people around the president to help him make a decision is not abnormal, but that it's playing out at such a high level considering what's going on in the world with Iran, North Korea, and all the rest is unfortunate. But I think it's more of the same. I think people are very tired of it. But I think at the end of the day, I think this is actually going to benefit Trump.
I got to hear this.
Because there's not been one legislative victory. There's nothing on taxes, nothing on health care, and this is the MO that he deployed during the campaign that was very successful, whether it was against Cruz, whether it was against Jeb Bush, and he's just doing more of the same.
When things are going bad, make a distraction.
Make a distraction.
So if he can't get a win in Congress, he's going to get a win in
this energizes his base. When he goes out there and he says, Lil Corker, his base loves that stuff.
So it's the insult. I can win the insult competition if I can't
Absolutely.
win anything legislatively in
He's
Washington.
Right.
I suppose so, but look, putting aside the fact that this all plays out like they're in the principal's office trying to figure out who stole the other team's mascot. No, I have this on tape. I have this note that you handed me in study hall, which just makes everybody and makes the country look bad. I keep wondering if I'm the foreign secretary of a country somewhere around the world, and I've got an international crisis or the potential for an international crisis, and I need American leadership. I need to know where the U.S. is going to stand on this particular issue. I don't know who to call right now. I don't know if I'm calling Mattis, if I'm calling Tillerson, if I'm calling Trump, and I don't know who to believe.
And if Tillerson
when they actually answer the
represents
question.
something,
Right.
when he's sitting in your
if
world
Tillerson gives me
capital-
answer A, what's to make me think that Trump's not going to contradict that on Twitter in 10 minutes from now? I mean, these crises have a way of blowing up, and small things become big things very quickly.
And to me, Scott, and I saw Corker talk on this a few times, he clearly is saying, I'm not going rogue here. I'm speaking for a whole bunch of folks. And the implication is, if you folks only knew what was happening behind closed doors on Pennsylvania Avenue, you'd be as scared as I am. And nobody is saying, no, that's not the case. He doesn't know of what he speaks. I thought it was interesting. Mattis or Kelly. I haven't heard peep out of either one of them right now, right? That all is fine in the big White House in Washington. That concerns me. Now, whatever you think, you didn't like him, you voted for him, you did, you didn't. You want stability in there. You don't want the idea that it's managed chaos on a daily basis.
No, you're right. And of course, we've all been to kindergarten. This doesn't rise to the level of study hall. I mean, this is kindergarten stuff.
I overshot.
You took my pen, and I'm going to get you at recess. I mean, it's scary stuff, and I disagree pretty strongly. I mean, on one issue. This may or may not help the base, although I think that base is starting to shred, frankly. But more importantly, if he wants to get something accomplished in this legislation, he needs 52 votes, 51 votes. Corker is a key attacking him and McCain and other people doesn't help him get something accomplished. And in the end, in 2018, people are going to say, okay, excuse me, what did you do, Mr. Congressman, to help all those things that were supposed to be done that Trump and you promised? He's not going to get it done by attacking the very same people he needs to get these.
There's so much I want to get to. I want to get your. I'll stay with you for a second. If you're Tillerson, and you've been humiliated or embarrassed or contradicted on more than one occasion, okay? You were a professional person. You were a real person, okay? And in your former life. At some point, do you say, I'm going to walk? Now, we were talking before, there's reporting, not really substantiated, that there's a quote-unquote suicide pact that between Tillerson, also Kelly, and maybe even Mnuchin, or that we ever, that if one goes, they all go. I'm concerned about that. Like, some would say, you know what, you all say you can't do this without us. It may make them at least abide by more presidential norms. I haven't seen that yet. But if they leave, what's left behind? How would you navigate that if you were sitting in an administration and the commander-in-chief was someone that you couldn't agree with on many things and you also thought he was undercutting you?
Well, I think from a personal point of view, of course, it's embarrassing. You know, it's disruptive. To Andrew's point, no one knows who's speaking for whom. But you see, the guy Kelly, he's key to this because to the extent he can control what happens on an international relations or whatever, I think is key to the future. And I think Tillerson's staying on because of him. I don't know about the suicide pact, but I think he has that strength. And I think probably Mattis too. I mean, what bothers me more than anything else is not even the politics. We are dealing with fundamental issues in North Korea that deal with the lives of Americans. And perhaps a major war. Iran, major issues, Russia. All of this is just such nonsense. Well, and you know, and just final point on it, Richard, and that makes Tillerson's job that much more important.
Oh my gosh. Vinny, I'm rare time. I had to ask you though, Bannon has made it very clear. He's targeting not just a Republican, every Republican incumbent other than Ted Cruz, okay? From a party standpoint, how concerning is it that you have an all-out civil war in the party brewing right now?
Concerning, but there are only 8 Republicans up right now, or for the next election, and it's going to put the president in a box because it's going to really tighten his hands on whether or not he can deal with some of the Democrats, some of the more conservative Democrats, and some of the more moderates in the Republican Party. Bannon is basically putting a litmus test for Trump that if you don't follow this brand of nationalism, which Bannon believes got him to the White House, you're going to be branded a traitor. And I'm going to, do my best to get these ultra-nationalist Republicans to primary other Republicans and more establishment Republicans. And I think what we will see is something very similar to 2010 when the Tea Party just took out a lot of credible Republican candidates.
And I'm not sure what Trump really wants or doesn't want, especially after what we saw in Alabama last week. All right, coming up next, everybody, we're going to forget the feuds for a minute and look at the issues, because believe it or not, it's not just a Twitter he said, she said here. Big news when it comes to immigration, healthcare, and what happens there could impact all of us in one way or another. Some substance straight ahead.